Okay, so hi, Janet. Thank you
Hi.
so very much for taking the time from your very busy schedule to participate in the podcast and for, giving us your time to share your knowledge and your wisdom on parenting and inner growth and so many of the things that we're going to be talking about today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. So, as you know, today we're going to be talking about how parents of children, not teenagers, but children specifically, how parents can begin to repair the connection with their children if perhaps for some time, for years maybe, they have been parenting from reactivity, from punitive approaches to their children's behaviors, and also from their emotional wounds that perhaps they haven't had a chance to, or even been aware of that they have, that they're carrying. Have you seen this? I'm pretty sure you've seen this in your practice, but what do you think is where could parents begin if they say to themselves, you know what, I'm learning so much about conscious parenting, mindful parenting, respectful parenting, and I see that I've been doing it in a way that hasn't fostered my kids' healthy sense of self. Where do I even begin to change,
Yeah, the hard answer and the only answer, in my opinion, is it has to start with you, the parent, right? We parents who have been parenting from a top-down approach, a discipline approach, a yelling and screaming approach, are probably finding that their children's behavior just gets worse and worse and worse. And the worse the child's behavior becomes, the more punitive the parent becomes. And I know as parents, we all make all sorts of promises to ourselves. I'm not going to yell again. I'm going to be kinder. I'm not going to be as strict. I won't take away the device. And maybe you, the parent, are good for a day because the kid happens to be having a good day. But the moment your child doesn't have a good day, you lose your mind again. And you go back to the way you've been parenting, which hasn't been working. And it's not really your fault because parents haven't learned another way, even if they've read the conscious parenting books or mindful parenting or peaceful parenting, even if they've read all the books. For some people, it is just too hard to take what you've read in a book and just apply it in your life. And the reason why is because we're coming from the intellect. You're coming from the thinking mind. You want to be in your heart, but you're having a hard time getting there because it's hard to be in your heart with your child, though you love your child, when you can't find that love in your heart for yourself. So until you can be in a place of compassion for yourself and your own pain and your own story, it's going to be very hard to shift that with your child because we're still coming from the energy of wanting that child to change. So change first has to start within the parent, and the parent really acknowledging and being brutally honest with themselves, like, I need help. I have to commit to it. I can't start and stop, send my kid to therapy, pull the kid out because the kid doesn't get any better, do family therapy, stop family therapy after 5, 6, 7, 8 sessions because the family doesn't get any better, stop my own therapy, stop psychotropic meds. It doesn't work. It took a long time for these patterns and behaviors to manifest in the family. So therefore it takes time for them to heal. And the only way through that is with a commitment, and we have to go through the pain of it all. And that really means being honest with ourselves about our co-creation into now what is in front of us with a child that maybe has really significant behavioral issues. But as parents, we have to own the painful fact that we did actually help to co-create that.
Right. Yes, those are excellent points. One thing that you mentioned brings me to a question. In terms of where the parents can begin, as you mentioned, we need to begin with our own inner work, how we have contributed to the dynamics that we're now living with our children. When do you think, or how could parents identify if it's enough, so to speak, for them to begin working on themselves, or if they might be at a point in the rupturing, in the disconnection with their children, where they might need some professional help, be it through coaching, be it a little, maybe through therapy? How can parents better assess, you know what, I'm at a point where, yes, the dynamics are not conducive to a healthy emotional environment here, so let me look at myself and start working on me, or if it merits more professional guidance?
I think the minute you start questioning, do I need help? The answer to that question is yes. Because when something becomes that uncomfortable emotionally, that it's affecting you each and every day, affecting your mood, your behavior, maybe your sleep, maybe your eating, maybe your self-care, it's time to get help. So if you're questioning, do I need help? The answer is yes, you need help. And there's no shame in that. That's why coaches and therapists exist. All of us need help. Every single one of us. No one is immune.
Right. That's absolutely true. I think even we're getting a lot better now in terms of not having shame around needing help. But for moms and dads who are listening, to know that, you know, that's a great way to find out. If you are asking yourself, might I need help with this? Then the answer is yes, absolutely, because you're not supposed to have all these answers. You know, as we know, culture tells us, well, if you're a mom, you'll always know what to do. It's in your instincts. And no, it's not. It's something you learn. You gradually become more aware, right?
So true. So true.
In terms of the challenges that you feel parents could face in repairing the disconnection that they might be experiencing with their children. Say, for example, a mom of a 7-year-old has had the pattern of constantly being reactive when her son misbehaves, you know, yelling, screaming, threatening, punishing, and it's obviously not working. And she's now realizing, you know what, there's such a healthier way to go about my relationship. I'm going to change. What challenges do you think a parent of a child this age could expect to see? I mean, one that comes to me, for example, is if a child is constantly being told or reprimanded when they come with the truth about having done something they shouldn't have done, you know, that honesty, and they immediately get, you know, this punishment and this yelling, that kid is going to be more guarded. Next time I'm going to hide, right, that I did this. So they won't be as open in their communication with us, right? That's one challenge. But what others have you seen that parents could face in trying to repair the connection, and that they might see some dynamic, you know, some challenges there with their kids in the process?
Well, I think when you first start to make any kind of change, even though it will be a positive one, your children are used to the way you have been treating them. So even if you go from yelling to not yelling, they're going to be like, why'd you change? Because now you're taking away what I knew and what I expected to be true. When I'll just share a little personal story. My youngest was 11 years old when I found Conscious Parenting and read The Awakened Family. And I picked up that book because of her. My other two were already a little older, but I didn't know about Dr. Shefali earlier. I would have picked up her books earlier. And I started applying what I was reading in the book with her. And about 2 weeks later, she came to me all upset. What are you doing? Why are you talking about all this feeling stuff all of the time, all of a sudden? And right now, none of that was bad. None of it was punitive. None of it was yelling. But I changed the paradigm. I changed the dynamic on a dime, is what it felt to her. And she freaked out. And, you know, I just had to be with her, and wow, this is different, this is new, and we're going to start changing things. So it's impossible to sit here and predict how a child may respond when you start consistently showing up differently. But that's the key. You have to be consistent. No matter what path you take to change or improve and heal, it must be consistent. You can't be wishy-washy. You can't flip-flop. One day you're loving mommy, one day you're strict mommy, one day you're taking away devices, one day you're letting them have them as a free-for-all. It won't work. Children need consistency. They need predictability. So I don't think it would be fair to me to say this will happen if you do that, because that's impossible, because I don't know what energy the parent is showing up with. We don't know the energy of the situation, and we don't know the temperament of the child, and the whole history that came before is also going to inform what happens in the present moment.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, something that comes up for me right now when you mention this is the reminding ourselves that it really comes down to us, and where we as parents need to be compassionate enough and courageous enough to look within and say, I have been doing X for years or this for years, and not just see that there's this disconnection, gradual disconnection with our children, but also perhaps that they may be behaving in the very same ways to frustration, right? That we react in, the same lashing out at the slightest thing, or the same anger at something that maybe for us isn't a big deal, but that's how they've learned to respond. So not just in addressing us, but in how we begin to model those intense moments, right?
100%, 100%. Yeah, they're learning from us, even the stuff we don't want them to learn, they're learning.
Right. And, you know, something that I'm reminded of also, Dr. Daniel Siegel in one of his conferences talking about his book, No Drama Discipline, he talks about how as parents, we all have the potential for being reactive. We all have that, it's going to happen from time to time, but that especially if we have had a difficult childhood ourselves, then we are more prone to showing up reactively in the signs that we've had a difficult childhood that we haven't resolved yet. Shows up in like these 5 ways. 1, we get angry much more quickly, so we have a shorter fuse. 2nd, when we do get angry, we reach this like explosive level of anger. It's like this intensity, right? I think the 3rd one is that you last a lot longer. You can't get out of that, you know, maybe we manifest it through emotionally distant with our children or something. And then the 4th one is it's so hard to get out of that state that then we don't go and connect again. Right? So how can parents, what recommendations could you share for parents who find themselves in one or all of those sort of reactions, that they see themselves, ooh, maybe listening, going, yeah, that happens to me, and that one, for not stopping themselves, because it feels more like you have to stop, but just, you know, shifting the energy to a different one in the moment.
Right. And I think that is about being mindful in the moment, right? Because in those stages you just talked about, what it makes me think about is our autonomic nervous system and how dysregulated we become, which means we're in fight or flight. We're not, or we're in freeze, but chances are if the parent is yelling and screaming and losing their mind, they're in fight or flight. And when we're in that hyperreactive state, and you trying to engage with your child, and your child is probably also in fight or flight at the moment and in a hyperreactive state, you have 2 people who are heightened, who are emotionally not able to connect with their thinking brain. Nothing good is going to come of it. Nothing good will get resolved. The fight will just escalate. People get stuck in the muck of it, stuck in their point of view, and just nothing good is going to come of it. So what I like to teach parents is to pause, to take a very purposeful pause before you open your mouth. Unless it is life and death and your kid is about to strangle himself from the curtain string, you pause and you tune into your body. But maybe your kid just screamed, I hate you, right? Kids do that all the time. Might have done it to me. And that's okay. It's not really about me. It's about how they're feeling in the moment. But when they say something like that, something inside of you gets woken up. That lion inside of you wants to just roar back. But it's up to you to tame that lion inside of you first, to pause, take a break. If you can leave the room and leave the child safely, you leave the room, get a glass of water, go step outside. If you can't leave the room, go to a corner. So you can still keep an eyeball on your kid while you calm yourself down and take a few breaths and tune into where you're feeling it in your body, and imagine yourself breathing your breath into your heart or into your stomach or into your head if you start getting a headache. And when you're calm again and your breathing is regulated and your thinking mind is turned back on and you can be rational, then you can approach your child and say, hey, let's talk about what just happened. When you said, I hate you, mommy, obviously something is going on and you're really angry. So why don't you tell me what's happening? And, obviously, depending on the age of the child, you're going to have to adjust your language and how you approach it. Maybe you're going to need to sit down and draw. Maybe you have to have a dance party just to move the energy, but you have to get creative. Otherwise, we're so stuck in our conditioning. Your child is going to keep repeating the exact same pattern with you. And it's just going to get worse and worse as they get older, when they start really cursing at you and slamming doors and leaving the house and whatever they do when they get bigger.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Something that comes to mind as you say this, in terms of when you say step out of the room after having breathed or, having had a glass of water. And that, of course, what we say and how we say the words that we say will depend on our child's age. But in terms of speaking with our children, say years after we've been behaving in a way that is punitive, et cetera, trying to help them understand where we've been coming from, and why, without making them our therapists, right? Where do you find that balance can be? Because, for example, I said to my son recently, he's 6. I said to him, and ever since I started with conscious parenting and really learning about it, I have improved. But when I do lose my patience, and when I find myself, I yelled, I go to him and I say something like, you know what? I didn't learn growing up how to calm down when I felt angry, and I'm still working on it. Mm-hmm. I want you to know that that's something I'm working on, and I didn't yell because it was your fault. It was because I didn't know how to handle my feelings. Mm-hmm. So now and then we'll talk about whatever it is that he needs to work on, right? But what kinds of conversations do you recommend we can, or how can we speak with our children in a way that they know, you know what, it's not because I'm defective in some way that mom and dad have been doing these things for years, right? For them to kind of know that this is why they're changing. It's not because all of a sudden, wait, mom and dad are different, but rather, they've struggled with this, right? Without making them our therapists, so to speak, without them needing to hear this whole story about how we were growing up.
Right. No, you're right. And I think the way you handled it with your son is beautiful. And that's exactly perfect. And it depends on the age of your child, like you said. So a 3-year-old, you could just say to your 3-year-old, mommy was wrong. Mommy made a mistake. And I love you, and let me have a hug, or let's hug it out, or, let's have a dance party. And, we don't really want to attach food to it or snacks, because then we're teaching our kids to self-soothe with food, and that just leads to other problems. But it's no matter how old or young your child is, just own your stuff and say you're sorry. That's all. And let them know what just happened was not your fault. Mommy had a hard day, daddy had a hard day, and I'm sorry that I took it out on you. And that's all. That's all the children want to hear. They live moment to moment. They're going to move on. They're going to be like, that's okay. Let's go play. It's fine. Parents beat themselves up so much, and probably no one ever came and apologized to them or owned what they were doing in the moment. So that behavior was never modeled for you, the parent. All of a sudden, you have to do it with your child. That might feel really scary for a parent, really vulnerable for a parent to do that, even if it's a young child, to admit I made a mistake. Because what would that mean about you and your parenting? And there's a whole story that's going to be attached to that too.
Right. You know, I think that's such a great point that you raise in terms of going back and saying, apologizing and saying it wasn't because of you. I had a tough day, and owning it. That owning it piece is so important in repairing that connection, whether it was the disconnection in the moment or perhaps over time that we have been creating disconnection with our children. Owning that, because it helps not only to reestablish that connection, right? But also it helps build our kids' healthy sense of self, to not say to themselves, it was because of me, it was my fault, or I'm sorry I made you angry, mommy. Oh no, you didn't make me angry. So I think that's such an important point to raise. How would you, what would you say to parents who are hearing this and maybe saying, yes, I want to improve. Yes, I want to be a conscious parent. But if I keep apologizing to my kid, won't they feel like not safe? Like, aren't I supposed to be like the strong leader in the family who's like guiding? Like, what do you recommend for parents who are perhaps a little cautious or weary about going back to their kid and apologizing constantly for their mistakes, so to speak?
I would say, wouldn't you have liked to have a safe space when you were growing up, and an adult or a caregiver that you could say whatever you needed to say and trust that you would be safe in saying it? And I bet we would, all of us, myself included, would have loved that safe space. So, in going to your child and saying, mommy made a mistake, daddy made a mistake, I'm sorry, let's start again. I was in a bad mood before, this wasn't your fault. What you're doing is letting your child know that this relationship between us is a safe one. So I'm going to come to you honestly. Therefore, I'm showing you you can come to me honestly. And that's actually going to create connection, right? And so it's not parent over the child. We're parenting with the child, alongside the child, creating connection, not correction. You don't really need correction. We just think we do because we're so fear-based. I'm worried about what's going to happen to my child 20 years from now if I don't do this, and am not hard on them right now in this moment.
Right. Or perhaps we saw that a member of our family was being treated very permissively. And so we fear that if we are permissive, then our child is going to, well, of course, we don't want to be, there's a balance. There are going to be limits. It's not that we're advocating for let your kid do whatever they want, but perhaps we're coming with our own fears of, if I don't, become very harsh with this, then my kid is going to be, criminal or something like that, right? So we're coming with our
100%.
fears many times.
100%. I had a session with a client yesterday who has 2 elementary school children. And this woman is very much into activism and community involvement. And these are young elementary school age children. And she was getting anxious because she couldn't find community service for them. And how would they ever learn to be involved and care about other people if they're not doing community service? They're young elementary school age children. She wanted them, out there volunteering in homeless shelters and food pantries. They won't have them. And she was 10 years in the future, worried, 20 years in the future. I'm like, go shopping with them and just bring the food to a drop-off place. Do a Toys for Tots drop-off for Christmas, like age appropriate. But she was already in the future. So parents, well, even if that's all right, that's a really good thing. So altruistic. She wants to teach her children, but she's in the future. She's not in the now. So then you miss the beauty of the moments of the now. And the fear, when fear drives the ship, we just get lost. Every single one of us, myself included, but we all get into fear. It's a very normal, emotional response and reaction, but we have to catch ourselves. Why am I saying this? Why am I parenting in this way?
Yeah, I
What's
think,
driving this, you know?
yes, I think you've raised such important points so far. When fear is our driving factor,
Mm-hmm.
that is the one of the best recipes for losing it, right? Because we're operating from fear. And if we're not owning that it's us, how are we going to connect? Because we just keep blaming the kid
Yeah,
and we keep saying it's their fault. If only they behaved differently, I wouldn't lose it. And so again, more emotional disconnection. And if we
exactly.
don't, verbalize our owning our stuff, because we could very well in our own beds at night go, yeah, you know what, this really was me. This is how I contributed to the dynamic. And then not let our kid know that we owned it. They continue to feel that it's because of them. They're bad kids, or they're, the naughty ones or whatever. So it's owning it within us and then letting them know that we own it, having that humility, and then working on whatever it is that we're owning, right? It's not like it's just, yeah, that was me, but okay, now what am I going to do about me? How am I
Right.
going to get the help? And then not letting the fear be the driving factor. And I think when we see that it's fear that's driving it, most of our dynamics that are perhaps dysfunctional with our kids, that's how I think that's a very big sort of red flag, that there's a lot that's unhealed within us,
Yeah.
right?
But people are so afraid, thinking something is wrong with me. And because they're so afraid that what if something is wrong with me, that they don't look at themselves. And then if they say, well, maybe this behavior of my child is because something is wrong with me, that's even worse and bigger. So they just keep wanting to change the child, because if we can change the child and make the child different, then maybe something is not wrong with me. But nothing is wrong with any one of us. Any one of us, no matter what we're doing, unless, of course, we're committing a crime, physically hurting someone, in some way, shape, or form. But at our core, nothing is wrong with any of us. I think in general, though, people have just lost their sense of feeling worthy. And when we don't feel that we're worthy, it affects every other aspect of our life, because we're coming to every situation almost needy that the outside should make me feel better on the inside. And that includes our children, because when they do well in school, when they do well in sports, when they get that next belt at martial arts or their medal at soccer, we, the parent, feel good, right? Like it was our achievement.
Right. It's my kid, so it's my achievement.
Right.
Unconsciously, right? We don't
They
realize that.
own it like it's theirs, but it's not. It has nothing to do with you. Just like if they do poorly, it has nothing to do with you. But people see their children as an extension and a reflection of themselves, and that's so not fair to our kids.
Yes, exactly. Um, One thing that I think can help parents that comes to mind right now, when you said about how we become, seeing their achievements or their failures as a reflection of us, or coming from fear, right? What's going to happen now? And how that isn't helpful. Um, I think that something that has helped me has been to remind my son that I love him for who he is,
Hmm.
not for what he does. But honestly, I've had to work a lot on loving me for who I am and not for what I do, because otherwise I'm not being genuine. And I have had to work on that a lot in my life. And I've learned through conscious parenting that if I don't live something, if I don't model it, if I don't embody it, I'm not really going to transmit it to him. So I've had to do a lot of inner work to really be honest and say, do I really love me for who I am and not for what I do, or hate myself for what I did wrong? Because otherwise I'm going to keep transmitting that to him, that I love him, so to speak, more because of what he did right and less because of what he did wrong. So I think that, what do you think? I think that could be a good beginning for parents too, right? To see, am I really doing this for myself in the intent of repairing, right? The disconnection.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I really don't even have anything to add to that. I mean, that's exactly it. You know, that we're just looking to fill our inner holes with external experiences, whether that's through our children or something else. Everyone is searching for happiness. But I was listening to Brene Brown's podcast, I think last week. I forget who she had on, but they were talking about the difference between happiness and joy, and how happiness is fleeting. And we're always looking for something on the outside of us to feel happy. I only feel happy if A, B, C, D, E happens. My team wins. My kid does well. I got out of work on time. But joy is different. Joy is an internal state. Joy is something that comes from the inside out. Joy is something that we hold within us so that it is not fleeting, and that we can recall a joyful memory. And that's ours. See, it's not coming from the outside. And I think if parents can learn that it's not your child that makes you happy, mad, sad, scared at all. Those are just your feelings you're projecting on your child. And if you can tune into yourself as a parent and say, what were real moments of bringing me joy? Was it the day your child was born? Maybe it was the day you graduated high school or college, or had a really great conversation with someone that was deep and meaningful, or went somewhere and it blew you away and you were just filled with joy. Whatever that is, or when you learned something, that's yours. Everything else is just a projection of the hurt inside of you. And because it hurts so much, we can't hold it. So we put it on our poor children whose shoulders are so narrow, and it's so unfair to them.
So it just brings back moments that I'm thinking about when I've had to work on all of these things. I think it's so helpful for parents who are listening to just hear you say that and know, so this is an area that I can really begin to work on and address. I like the distinction. I hadn't heard that distinction, joy and happiness. And I love it because you can see the difference. And in doing that, you can stop aspiring for the external and really work on the internal, and know that we're going to transmit that also, to our children when we focus on the internal, right?
100%. Yeah, 100%, because there's no other way to do it. There is absolutely no other way to do it. Otherwise, every day we feel like we're failing as parents, because every day all we see is what's going wrong, and putting all the focus and attention on that, as opposed to, well, what went right today?
Yeah.
What can I celebrate today? And maybe it's the smallest thing, like your child did not spill their drink all day. Let's celebrate that at the end of the day.
Yes.
That would be a good thing, right? That would be amazing. It could be something so simple, to find those simple joys in life, in the day, that your child spotted a butterfly or a bird, or giggled really, really hard and really, really long, or whatever it is. But we miss those little micro moments of joy because we're looking for the big things to fill up our big holes.
Right.
So I just want everyone to take away from this that all of us have the ability to heal. All of us that have the ability to feel better and do better and When you know better, you do better. And we can do that with our children, and we can teach that to our children, and we can model it for our children. But in the end, it all starts with us, the individual, the parent. It has to start with us. We can't have that expectation that once my kid does better, then I'll feel better.
Right.
Just won't
Yes,
work.
exactly. And then I guess my last question, Janet, because I'm getting close to, and I know you have other things you need to do as well, but I've had comments from some parents who have said, for example, it comes back to what you were mentioning, looking at the positives and not just what went wrong, right? I've had comments from some parents who have said, I know that I shouldn't just look at what my kid does wrong all day. But what I feel when I see my kid doing X, Y, Z all day is I feel not so much bad because of what he or she is doing, but I feel like it's such a reflection of my bad parenting, like how bad a mother I am. Because if I were a better mother, he or she wouldn't be doing these things, or they wouldn't be feeling these ways. And it's so hard for me to connect with my kid afterward, because I feel so bad within myself that I don't even know how to approach them anymore, because I just feel like there's something, wrong with my parenting or with me. And then that really reduces their ability to connect. I'd love to hear from you. What do you recommend to someone saying or something like that, or feeling that way?
First of all, I would say to that parent to go get help. Honestly, because that self-talk is so destructive. If you really listen to how harshly you're speaking to yourself, you wouldn't speak to anyone else like that, ever. Telling anyone else what a bad parent they were because of ABCD. You would never do it. But yet, this is the script in our head, and we listen to it and we believe it. But it's not true. You're just finding evidence to support this theory and then using it as fuel to continue believing it.
Wow. That's
and that needs
super
to
powerful.
be broken. It just has to be broken, but we can't break it on our own. Sometimes reading books will help 100%. Watching videos, listening to podcasts like this will help 100%. You're going to have those light bulb moments of, oh. But it's hard and challenging to take those next steps on your own without the support of an objective person to be able to reflect back to you the truth and to really hear you and hold it in sacred space. I would not be doing what I'm doing if I hadn't spent years in therapy. Everyone should be in therapy. Everyone should be with a coach, even for a little while. There's no shame in it. We all need to heal. We didn't get broken for no reason. I'm not sure that was great English, but we right. There's a reason that there are pieces that feel broken. Mm-hmm. There's a reason that we're hurting inside, and there's a reason we're projecting that hurt outside. And it's really hard to figure it out on your own. Not impossible, but really hard. And if you want to feel better, do better, have a better relationship with your children, just go get support.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
Yes. Thank you for that. And, for parents listening, I just, I want to say I'm, whoever's listening knows I'm a conscious parenting coach, but most of what I've been able to grow within myself has been because I've gotten the help. I've worked in therapy, and I've worked with you, Janet. Super amazing transformational change since having worked with you and just the inner work. And yes, the books have totally helped, but they helped, at least for me, more in the sense of shifting my perspective and beginning to ask myself questions and start to, observe. But the actual change didn't happen from that. It was really sort of the catapult to the beginning of the change. So getting the help, so important. And I think that that's a great way to end, because it says you deserve to get the support you need. And you don't have to do it all on your own. There's a reason that there's a profession that is, the helping professions, because sometimes we need the guidance and the support, and, you know, to be able to see where our blind spots are that we perhaps weren't even aware of before, right?
100%, 100%. We can't, that we are a species that needs community. You can't do it alone. We need help, right? People get personal trainers for exercise, right? They work with nutritionists, they work with business coaches, you name it. There's all sorts of professionals out there helping other people reach their goals. Mental health matters, emotional wellness matters. There are plenty of resources out there, and we shouldn't have to struggle alone in parenting either, which is the hardest job there is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. The relationship that most mirrors where we have yet to grow. Yes. Every day.
Yeah.
Janet, thank you so very much for your
You're
time.
welcome.
Thank you for your wisdom, for your knowledge, and for sharing with listeners and with me the perspective that we can begin to have around repairing connection with our children, and that it begins with connecting with ourselves. Right?
Yeah.
Where can listeners find you and you know, follow your work and learn about what you're doing?
Sure. So the best way, Karemi, is my website, which is janetphilbin.com, and the links to everything you want to know, and probably too much, is on my website. So it's one-stop shopping.
Perfect. And I'll include in the notes
Okay.
your website and your book as well.
Thank you.
Show Up for Yourself. Everybody, if you haven't read it, please read it. It is such an insightful book and helpful, and not just in terms of gaining knowledge, but on the steps that we can begin to take, you know, as parents and as individuals, even if we're not parents. I loved those aspects of it. So thank you so very much, Janet, for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you. Oh, and actually, last question. Are you on Instagram?
Yeah.
Oh,
Janet_Philbin_LCSW.
LCSW. Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.